Welcome to Book Talk. I'm Robin Kenny with Bolton Access Television, and I'm here with Michael McAfee. Please tell me I'm pronouncing your name right, Michael.
It's McAfee, yes.
Perfect. Okay. So he's a local author, and your book is called Tarot Poems, correct?
Sure, let me happen to have a copy here.
Ooh, beautiful.
I'll hold it still so people can focus on it. There we go.
Of poetry, correct?
Indeed.
Okay. And is poetry your main focus as a writer?
It's the easiest thing I can do, basically. I'm trying all sorts of different forms. Along with poetry, I'm currently working on a book for middle grade level students. I'm working on my first full-length play. I've done like one acts and skits and sketches for groups, but this is like my first attempt to write, like a full play that's goes over an hour.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
tough undertaking. I
But,
know.
but poetry is just very easy for me, so it's kind of like a bedrock.
Okay. And what can readers expect from tarot poems? What emotions are you trying to get across, or thoughts?
Well, I researched each of the 78 cards in a standard tarot deck, and then for their historical, their symbolic meanings, things like that, and then tried to find a poetic form that best fit each one to its best. So some will be sonnets, some will be free verse. They're all different forms, and but I did try to make sure each one sort of reflects what's involved in each card. So it's sort of like that's what people can expect.
Okay, so it's not the same. I don't know what you would call it. It's not the same type of poetry every time.
No, it's a variety.
Variety. Okay, great. And so tell me a little bit about the Post Meridian radio players. I see that you're involved with a radio group.
Yes. So even before I got involved with them, I tried one of the things I tried doing was writing radio theater, because at the time I was really having problems writing dialogue, for prose. But then it just sort of hit me, why not just write it down so just people have to read it, and that way you can just direct them how to say it. The Post Meridian Radio Players is pretty much Boston's premier radio theater community productions. Been going since our first one was 2005, so it's been going like a little over 15 years now.
That's a long time. And so is that all something that happens online, or is there performance?
Well, we're thinking about it now. What we did was live shows. We also did we also have studio work, but the thing that most people know us for are our live shows, because so how there are sound effects with radio theater?
That's the first thing I think of, is like people making footstep noises with like objects. Yeah.
Well, the technical term for that is Foley. And so what we have are live Foley artists doing our sound effects. So people really love to see how we make noises. Yeah,
that's interesting. Oh, cool. Well, I hope you get to start doing live shows again, but maybe some online stuff.
Yeah. Well, so before this all happened, and we got isolated, I was actually going to be directing an adaptation of the classic cult movie Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh, cool.
And we were really looking forward to having the sound. So those who have seen the movie know that it is kind of a train wreck of a film. And, Ed Wood just did not have the patience to really set up a shot properly. So it's a lot of good visual gaffes and weirdnesses that people just cannot turn away from. It is just so awesome in its awfulness. So we were hoping to sort of recreate that through sound with sound effects that were kind of odd. So we're looking forward to eventually getting it done.
Yeah, because that would be an interesting one to see. Definitely not your typical show. So do you have more? I mean, you spoke a little bit about a book for middle school. I was going to ask you if you have future works planned. Tell me a little bit about the middle school age book that
Oh,
you're working on.
I'm a big fan of spiders,
Okay.
and I think they're really cool. I mean, they're basically engineering critters. They make stuff, but so makes me kind of sad that people find spiders scary.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured it was because when they were kids, spiders were presented as scary things.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to write some stories where the spiders are heroic. And I mean, like the main characters of the book. I know people throw Charlotte's Web, but she wasn't the point of view character. She was, a secondary character
Yep.
for the pig.
Yep.
So what I'm doing is, and when I was that age, I was a big fan of mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm doing is sort of like making mythological adventure stories and coming up with, an artificial sense of, spider deities, spider heroes, the whole kind of universe
Mm-hmm.
that, while based in sort of realistically what a spider can do, still has heroic and epic scope.
Oh, that is really cool. I can see that is a great middle school age project.
So wish me luck on it.
Yeah, good luck. I had a cousin who, I'm not exactly an insect person, and I had a cousin who like loves insects and bugs, and it was always a cool thing for her to be when we were young. She was one of the only girls who really liked that stuff, so it's kind of
Excellent.
cool. Um, so I had a question here. I was thinking when I was reading your book, or excerpts from, I couldn't help but think of Ted Hughes, because he's a poet, and I know he's got this kind of like mystical, that people talk about the mysticism in his poems. So I didn't know if you'd ever read him or if you're a fan or not.
Um, Actually, no, I've not read him.
Hmm.
I've come across his work and didn't really get into it.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, I've also so poet friends of mine have opinions about Ted Hughes, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't go into it unbiased.
Yes,
So,
yes. Oh, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about him, that yeah, they
yeah,
blame him for certain historical events, etc.
yeah. So
Um,
I don't think I could go into it unbiased at this point.
yeah, that makes sense.
But I would say I
I
think in that sort of realm, it'd be closer to like Emily Dickinson and the naturalists of that period.
Oh, okay. That's good. I like Emily Dickinson. I saw a one woman play once, about her life.
Sure.
Um, so what are your influences or favorite writers, besides Dickinson?
Well, I've been writing poetry since I was like 5. So my earliest influences would be Dr. Seuss,
Hmm.
and then as I got older, Shel Silverstein.
Oh, great writer.
And but at this point, I would say the Romantic poets are a big influence. Poe, Shelley,
Hmm.
groups like that. I also enjoyed T.S. Eliot.
He's my favorite poet.
Right. Also another problematical one, but at least that one I came to beforehand before I read
Oh,
about
I
some
don't
of
even
the
know about his personal life.
right. But yeah, I mean, like the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock is I just even as a young man I
Oh,
really
it's
caught
one of
on
my
to it.
favorite. I almost have it memorized. When you watch a movie and you can kind of go along with it. Like I've tried to memorize the whole thing. It's just really long.
I tried to memorize, so I did memorize stuff when I was younger, but the only one that stuck in my head was Jabberwocky.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, that's so funny. Um, so did you have any poetry on you that you wanted to read during this interview,
sure.
or
Well,
some?
as I said, I have the book. So,
Yeah.
well, what I like to do is when I go to open mics.
Hmm.
So, since there's 78 poems, one for each card in a standard tarot deck, rather than just choose one ahead of time, I
Hmm.
like to pick one at random because just
Oh,
bring a tarot
smart.
deck with me and pick one at random.
That's nice.
So I'll just sort of do some shuffling here. Okay, and we'll pick Queen of Pentacles.
Okay.
There we go. All right, this one's more of a ballad form. It's arranged in quatrains, and it's pretty good. There the woman, there the tree, there the rabbit rushing by, there the flowers growing free. All are free who dare to try. Ermine shows her noble state, though she sits upon the ground. freeing her to liberate those whose ways and means are bound. Now she stands, she wants to speak, something that she must impart, voice and manner strong and sleek. Listen, she unloads her heart. Love is just a word away, so be careful what you say. Forget the lessons you have learned. Feed the fire until it burns. There her carriage set to ride, able to go any place. Blessed are those who sit beside, partners in her lifelong race. Now she spies you with a glance. There, she offers you her hand. Hold on tightly, take a chance. You are off to Wonderland.
That's great. Thank you
Thank you.
for reading that for us.
Sure.
Okay. And what are some of the ways people can access your work?
Okay, so I do. So what I have a print-on-demand service through the Harvard bookstore, and it's also available on Kindle and Nook. If someone on my website, the first, the title page has various buttons to go to places if you, depending on which one you want to order, and the website is WeirdEnt, which is WYRD-ENT.com.
Okay, great. And then, so just what was your background? Did you grow up in a literary household? You said you started writing when you were 5.
Well, so my mom used to be a college level English professor, and then she went on to technical writing. And my dad actually is a poet as well. He's been published in a few places. He has his own website, so his name's Robert McAfee. If people want to look him up.
Absolutely.
So it's just been a very encouraging kind of environment. And then when I got into high school, oddly enough, I discovered Dr. Demento.
Okay.
And there was a sort of a do-it-yourself feel to all the musicians that submitted songs to Dr. Demento. So it felt like anyone could write, create something, send it in, and have a chance of getting it listened to. So I just sort of thought about just writing stuff possibly for recording it at some later point. But it just sort of freed my mind that just, even though I never actually did any recording of it, just throughout college, I just felt even more like I could just do it. So, I have a pretty good collection of stuff I've written over the years, paired out anytime I realized something was just utterly horrible. Which is, if any poets out there will know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
And then, when the project idea hit me several years ago, I was just sort of in a good place because I had the toolbox of skills necessary to complete it in a relatively short time, about a year or so.
Wow. So you also work full time. So do you have any writing tips or tricks that you use for yourself that maybe other authors can bite off of?
Sure. Whenever I read anything by anyone else, I like to in my head over exaggerate the rhythm patterns. So if I were to, let me see if I have just a random piece here. So so they just think of it. Add signature motor club roadside assistance to your account. So it would be add signature motor club roadside assistance to your account. And I would get a sense of how that feels in the muscles. And the more I understand how it works in my muscles when it's time to write, when I get to a part that I just need to get over the hump, I'll have muscle memory that could at least suggest some kind of word to go next, and then I can just sort of listen to that and see if it works or not. A lot of poetry writing is in fact listening. It's listening to what's happened and then not forcing it to go where it needs to go, but just listening to where it needs to go and then figuring out if that's in fact where you want to go. So when you listen actively. That's probably the best advice at this point for anyone starting out. Just when you read actively. Don't just let it go in and then let it go out again.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying anytime you're reading any type of work, or when you're reading poetry?
All types of work.
All types.
because, since I'm with the radio theater group, there's always a possibility I might want to adapt something.
Yep.
So I'm always like listening to how things possibly could sound.
Okay, great. And um do you have any genres that you haven't mentioned that you like to delve into?
Well, I'm a fan of anything that's in the realm of the fantastic.
Okay.
I started out with science fiction, but that's, you can't just narrow yourself into one pocket where science fiction is concerned. That's why a lot of people group fantasy with science fiction as well. So because it's the same kind of feel, but without the technical constraints.
Interesting. Are you a Shakespeare fan at all?
Love Shakespeare.
Yeah.
In fact, the play I mentioned that I'm trying to work on, I found because I was doing research on the historical King Lear.
Hmm.
So it turns out the original story of King Lear is in this book called the Historia Britannica, the story of Britain. And along with King Lear, there are a bunch of other kings and queens mentioned, and one of them was Queen Gwendolyn of England.
Okay.
And much like King Lear, her family had serious issues, and it ended up in war.
Okay.
So that's why I'm adapting. So yeah, so that's why I've done a few acted in a couple of Shakespeare plays in community theater as well. So yeah.
Okay. And do you enjoy acting?
Um, yes, more of the not so much as like my real actor friends,
Yeah.
but I do enjoy the challenge.
Hmm.
And also along with writing poetry, I liked doing impersonating voices when I was a kid, and that's carried on. So
Oh, wow.
I enjoy the chance to do voices.
Oh, cool. Any of your favorite voices that you
Well,
could
let's see. Well, I mean, there's always ones that are good fallbacks. When there's Jimmy Stewart. If you can do a Jimmy Stewart, you're bound to find some interesting ways of delivering your lines.
Oh, that's so cool. One time I was at a Dunkin' Donuts and the teenagers working there had a sign out that said they would give you a discount if you ordered in a Christopher Walken voice. And I was like, I can't even try to do that. They're like, that's why it's funny. Come on, come on. They were just getting laughing at everyone who came in trying to do it.
So I actually figured out how to do Christopher Walken.
Okay.
You start with Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
But then you move him to Brooklyn, and if you do Jimmy Stewart with a Brooklyn accent, you're getting close.
Yeah, you are getting
to Christopher Walken.
That is so funny. Okay, so is there any advice in terms of writing? Because I'm sure it took a lot. I know I've written poetry. I understand there's a difference between writing a book of poems and writing a novel in terms of piecing everything together. And like novels, like a really big undertaking, as would your play be. But still, it takes a lot of work to put an entire book of poems together, especially because you wrote so many. So, do you have any advice about kind of timing that, carving that time out, discipline?
I would say don't push yourself. Not until it's time to market it. Then you should push yourself. But
Okay.
the actual creation process, if you push yourself and you don't do it, because writer's block is a thing, especially with the stresses of being in this time of isolation. If you're an extrovert like me, your brain's going to slow down. I've like felt it slow down.
Yeah.
So you have to accept that there are going to be times when you have ideas and they just don't come out.
Yeah.
So if you try to push yourself to the point where you just feel like a failure, even though you've coming up with the ideas themselves are an accomplishment. So pushing yourself more than that,
Can you
saying,
repeat that?
well, just coming up with the ideas that your story or your work is going, that's an accomplishment. Not everyone can do that. This is a skill.
That's true.
So if the time comes when you realize, okay, now I've got it, now I can write it down, do it. if it doesn't come along, wait for it to come along.
Right. You
But when it
can't
does,
push
grab
the
it.
creative process too hard, and it'll probably have the opposite effect of just the work will suffer
Exactly.
or you'll suffer. What about your advice to, because you're a pretty confident guy and you can do impressions, and what what would your advice be to somebody who's maybe writes poetry but is embarrassed about it, or is nervous or doesn't have the confidence, maybe a younger writer? What would your advice be to sort of move through that roadblock?
Um, so the worst time I ever had was back in the early 2000s when the economy went really under. I
Yeah.
work in the computer industry, and that was the dot-com bust.
Hmm.
So that was when I had like my worst job ever, which was like one step up above from telemarketing. So
Yep.
I basically had to call. So I had to work for this place that distributed. So that junk mail you get for advertising
Yeah.
that you get in the mail. Okay, there's a company that sends them out,
Hmm.
and they have to follow up to make sure that um, the post offices sent them out on
Oh,
time. So I was like the caller to bug, to basically to annoy the post offices to make sure that they got them done.
that sounds
This
like
is
a
yeah, this
pay your
is
dues kind of job.
oh, it was awful. And I felt that was like my lowest because just before, the dot-com bust hit, I was doing really well. Things looked bright, and then that happened. But then suddenly it hit me. No, this job can't be the worst ever because I'm doing it. And anything I do has to be by definition awesome. And I realized arrogance is your friend.
Mm,
But there's a specific type of arrogance that's your friend, and that's the arrogance that you are, no matter what the world throws at you to prove that you are somehow unworthy of stuff,
yeah.
you are in fact worthy of it, no matter what the rest of the world says.
Hmm.
Um, then one has to learn to sort of view others with that in that glass, so that you don't want to be the kind of arrogant that then says, "Oh, I'm great," because others are terrible. You don't want to put
Right.
people down in order to make yourself feel better.
Hmm.
So the kind of arrogance, you have to sort of like be arrogant about you and then feel arrogant about the rest of everyone else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm awesome. And so are you, because you have some quality. I might not see it right now, but I bet
I'll
you have
find
some
it.
quality that makes you awesome.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of like be an extroverted arrogance.
Yeah. And that there's a little bit of, fake it till you make it involved, I think, when you make that decision to kind of put yourself out there. So I'm glad that you put it that way, because you do have to make the decision
Hmm.
to be positive about what you're putting out into the world.
Right.
Um, so are you writing any poems like right now?
Yeah. So over the last year, I've been trying to focus on narrative poems. I'm a big fan of storytelling through poetry.
Hmm.
So I've been doing that, and yeah, just before everything hit, I was a few stanzas into the next one. It's
Uh,
slowed down since then, but every now and then when something hits, I'll pick it up and work on it.
yeah.
And yeah, that would be, I think, like my next, if I get to do a book again, I think it'll be a narrative poems. I'm certainly going to throw at least a couple of them into my repertoire
Hmm.
coming up, because I do my open mics whenever possible.
Oh, cool. Do you miss that?
Yeah, well, fortunately, there's some online ones that I've been able to get onto,
Hmm.
so that's been fun.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's really great that all those online forums are opening up. People are
Mhm.
starting to use them more.
So one of the things I hope to do in the next couple of weeks is set up sort of a concert. I mean, I've seen musicians set up from their home links
Hmm.
to do that, and I'm hoping to see about maybe doing a half-hour poetry show with both my works and a couple of covers that I really enjoy, because I want to see about. So I enjoy using like my voice acting techniques when delivering the poems. So I think it will be a good time, a splendid time for all. So I hope to get that. I might try Zoom, then I might try, like, I don't know, a Facebook live event, or maybe or some other Google event, something like that, and we'll go
Yeah.
from there. So we'll see
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
Facebook Live would be fun. You have a Facebook page or a business or just a personal, or do you have a?
Not yet. I have a personal one,
Okay.
but we'll see. I tend to use it just to promote my friends' activities, or if
Yeah.
I have, or if I have an upcoming show like with the radio theater group, or through the other theater, community theater groups I do stuff with, then I'll promote them. Thing is, I'm not a really big fan of company Facebook pages. They never seem to be useful to me. So
Yeah, it
I haven't
depends
really.
on what industry we're in. Yeah. So your website
Well,
again is
Weird. It's short for Weird Enterprises. It's
okay. So it's
WYRD-ENT.com.
Okay. Well, that's about all the time we have tonight. But I wanted to thank you for coming on. It was great to meet you on Zoom.
I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.